Exactly. Muchas gracias, Senor Minton. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Jano Lieber, President of MTA Construction and Development, and I want to thank everybody who's come for the formal kickoff of a new city MTA initiative we call Elevate Transit Zoning for Accessibility. This is a joint effort, as I said, between the MTA, the Department of City Planning, and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. It's going to further bolster the MTA's historic $5.2 billion commitment to accessibility projects by leveraging private development to bring system-wide accessibility faster and cheaper for New York taxpayers. Let me talk about what we've already done. Even during the pandemic, when our capital program was decimated by the collapse of the MTA's ridership and with it the collapse of the MTA's financial situation, even while the pandemic was going on, we maintained work on accessibility. Never stopped. 11 ADA stations opened in 2020. That is an amazing accomplishment. And it's in fact 11 ADA stations opening in 2020 is as many ADA stations as we ever opened in a single year before. But we can't rest on our laurels. In fact, this is going to be the new normal at the MTA. We have to continue delivering accessibility projects at an unprecedented rate. In December, as proof of that commitment, we awarded a contract for a package of 8 new ADA projects, moving forward on the commitment to 70 that is part of the 2020 to 24 capital program. As I said, our commitment plan for this year, 2021, includes more than $1 billion of work at stations, including ADA projects at 9 stations. So it's a lot that's already going on. Now, zoning for accessibility, which is why we're here today, is one of the tools that will help us make progress at an even faster rate on this accessibility issue. Zoning for accessibility will leverage private investment to build elevators in the system, and this is another tool for expediting our advance towards full system-wide accessibility. Under the zoning for accessibility approach, which we're announcing today in tandem with our partners at the city, we're going to work with developers to set aside space in their buildings that are being built to allow accessible entrances and improvements to be included, or for developers to actually include elevators and other improvements in their buildings at no cost to the MTA. Marissa Lago, the visionary head of the Department of City Planning, the chairman of the City Planning Commission, who's been an unbelievably great partner at every stage, is going to talk more about the specifics in a moment. But I want to emphasize that zoning for accessibility is not meant to replace our current commitment and our current efforts to build ADA accessible stations. It's actually meant to build on them and expedite them. Now, the Biden administration's commitment to relief for transit and their commitment to infrastructure in general is going to be a key driver for the region's recovery and the nation's recovery at large. And as we've all been hearing in the last couple of days, there's an incredibly exciting level of commitment that we've never seen before to infrastructure. But this initiative, zoning for accessibility, that's going to, is going to be a real game changer. I come from the real estate business. I'm a refugee with my third tour of duty in the public sector. But I've been thinking about how to get developers to build elevators and other incentives for a long time. And elevators really are for everybody in New York. Q talks about this a lot. Our Chief Accessibility Officer. They benefit not only people with mobility disabilities, but also older adults, parents with strollers, and really all New Yorkers and visitors to our city. So in short, I just want to emphasize that this is a unique partnership between the city, the MTA, and the disability advocacy community. I just really want to emphasize how much we appreciate the cooperation from all of the city and the advocacy groups. From our team, Bob Paley, there's a group of people at MTA who do transit-oriented development who've been working on this with the city for a long time. We have a great government community relations group headed by Abby Collins and Will Schwartz. But let me tell you, our next step is to join forces with our city partners and go to the council, who's been great, by the way, up to now, with the goal of having the city council vote on this soon. So I want to thank everybody for coming and turn it over to Q for your perspective. Q is our new MTA Chief Accessibility Officer and the first in that role at the MTA. Q.
Thank you, Jano. Good morning. I'm Camilo Arroyo, Chief Accessibility Officer for the MTA. I'm happy to be here today for this game-changing announcement that will make it possible to advance the effort for citywide zoning changes and allow the MTA to leverage our private development partnerships to achieve full accessible transit system. It's a pleasure to be here and to be partnering with my friend Victor Calisi and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, the Department of City Planning, the New York City Council, and our dedicated transportation advocate to build on a framework that would enhance accessibility improvements throughout the city. There are 472 subway stations in New York City, and only 131 of them are accessible to all riders. On Staten Island, 5 of the 21 railroad stations are accessible. And of the Metro North and Long Island Railroad stations located within city limits, 1/2 and 2/3 are accessible. For wheelchair users like myself, seniors with mobility difficulties, parents with strollers, and so many others, it can be a daily challenge to get around. And there are reasons for that. Our subway system is 117 years old, and underground space is limited, and existing utilities are expensive and sometimes nearly impossible to move. But those obstacles are not an excuse for inaction, and MTA is fully committed to making transit accessible for all. Despite a global pandemic and dire financial crisis this past year, the MTA remained more committed than ever to accessibility. Thank you, Jano. Under Jano Lieber's construction and development team, we opened new elevators at 11 stations last year and ensured the work will continue by awarding contracts for 13 additional stations using federal funds. Elevate Transit, or zoning for accessibility, would accelerate the installation of elevators and improve station layouts and passenger flow. It would allow us to bring accessibility to stations where it would otherwise be extremely difficult, often due to narrow sidewalks, particularly around elevated stations. And we would do all this using private investments in our system by working with developers who are already planning on building near subway stations to usher in critical accessibility improvements at no cost to New Yorkers. We need to continue to build for the future and think about what new tools we can leverage to make the necessary advances that meet the needs and challenges of each and every one of our transit riders. Let's not forget that mass transit has the power to bring about greater social equity, and that means the inclusion of persons from all populations and all different abilities. Zoning for accessibility achieves that. So once again, thank you to our city partners, our advocates, and private developers who understand the importance of elevating transit accessibility for all. With that, Marissa Lago.
Yeah. The Chairman of the City Planning Commission, Marissa Lago.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Marissa Lago, and I am so happy to be here today to announce the Elevate Transit Zoning for Accessibility text amendment, which is heading into formal public review this coming Monday. As chair of the City Planning Commission and director of the Department of City Planning, I have to say right off the bat that equity and accessibility are fundamental to all of well-considered long-term planning in our city. They're also goals that too often have remained elusive to many of the nearly 1 million New Yorkers living with disabilities, who on a daily basis, and like the rest of us, are simply trying to get to work, to the library, to market, to see friends. While New York City is unlikely ever to be a super easy town to live in, this zoning text amendment promises to make our city a fairer place. To get to where we are today, the Department of City Planning has worked extremely closely with the City Council, and I want to give a special shout out to Speaker Corey Johnson and the Council's land use staff. We've also worked hand in glove with the MTA and with the Mayor's Office for people with disabilities. The goal is to expand and simplify existing zoning rules that are currently limited to only a few areas of the city, and mostly in Manhattan Central business districts and along the 2nd Avenue subway line. I am extremely proud of the projects that we've already advanced during my 4-year tenure as the City Planning Commission Chair, including the approval of a building being built by a private landowner and who is simultaneously constructing 2 elevators at the Broad Street J and Z stations. That station is the terminus of the J and Z lines. The developer is also making improvements to the Wall Street 4 and 5 subway station. Both of these stations are in the heart of the financial district, and we know that it's an area that is home to so many jobs in our city, but it's also home to some of the oldest and least accessible subway stations. In an old, dense, built-out city like ours, and as Q noted, accessible stations have been slow in coming, and zoning for accessibility will help us get to where we need to be more quickly and with a partnership with the private sector. I very much am looking forward to the public input that we will be receiving over the coming months when this proposal will be reviewed by all 59 community boards, all 5 borough boards, and all 5 borough presidents, because this is truly a citywide initiative. I'll end by thanking all of our partners, and especially the advocates, those who are here today and those no longer with us. They've worked tirelessly and for decades to make our city more accessible, and I'm counting on them to continue to help guide us, to prod us on this project and beyond. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Victor Calisi. I am the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, and I'm also an MTA board member. And I'm excited to be here today. Why? Because this is MTA's first accessible podium. Look at that, right? A commitment to accessibility is not just elevators, it really is making everything accessible. So I advocate for these types of things because little things like this make a big difference. And as we are here today to support Elevate Transit for zoning accessibility, it is, as Quamel said, a game changer. It is a commitment that Jano said to go over and beyond accessibility. And that's what Elevate for Transit Accessibility does, right? It really brings us and capitalizes on the 2024 capital plan to go and add more elevators every place and everywhere that we can. I've been thinking about this, incentivizing developers for over 15 years when I was with the Parks Department, seeing how they did this with the High Line. And I've advocated in city government for a long time, as Commissioner Lago and I know that I've been pushing city government to do this for some time. And it's happening today, right? And I've also pushed to have a person with a disability on the board of the MTA. So seeing those two things full circle is really something that's extraordinary. I want to I want to thank everyone that's here today. I want to thank Edward Friedman, who's on my team, that works on a lot of accessibility issues in transportation. And really, this is a unique partnership between the city and the state and the advocacy community. And ZFA is a big win for the disability community, and we need your support. So please come to the community board meetings and call on your city council members to approve this measure, because it's going to really make a difference in people's lives. And I am also excited to have Quimel Arroyo on the team as the Chief Accessibility Officer. He's really has proven himself, and I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure that he's successful. And I want to thank the community for being here today, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Murray. There you go, Jessica.
Hi, my name is Jessica Murray. I'm the chair of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility for New York City Transit. Some of you may know me as a member of the Elevator Action Group, but my opinions today are my own. So as a longtime advocate for a fully accessible subway system, I understand the scale of this challenge. It's enormous. We need to build hundreds of new elevators to make the system accessible for everyone. And there are very real obstacles that determine the placement of elevators and the ongoing maintenance and upkeep which are necessary for each elevator that is installed. So requiring developers to provide easements when they build next to a subway station is just common sense, in my opinion. It will save taxpayer money by reducing the need for relocating utilities that drive up the cost of ADA station renovations. And creating an incentive for additional elevators to be built and maintained will help us to reach the goal of full accessibility even sooner. So the MTA Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and City Planning have put in a lot of time to meet with advocates and address our concerns, which I really appreciate. And I hope that the community boards and city council will support this proposal and get us closer to our goal of having a subway that works for everyone. Thank you. And I'm turning it over to Jose from United Spinal.
Want to get closer?
I am.
Get closer. Got it?
That's good.
Okay. Good? Perfect.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello, my name is Jose Hernandez. I'm with United Spinal Association. First off, I want to thank the MTA for its dedication for accessibility. This started with the hire of Alex L. Guten, Senior Advisor for System-Wide Accessibility, a person who uses a motorized wheelchair. This was followed by the addition of Victor Calisi to the board, another visible wheelchair user. And now we have Quimel Arroyo, who is the Chief Accessibility Officer, and again, another visible wheelchair user who uses the subway system and understands our needs. I hope that this trend continues, and I believe zoning for transit accessibility is a demonstration of that. ZTA will allow private developers to pay for certain accessibility features, such as the installation of elevators in neighboring subway stations in high-density neighborhoods. This is one elevator that the MTA does not have to pay for. And it's usually the most expensive. You know, the reroute of electrical and other infrastructure doesn't have to be done. Without ZFA, the MTA would have to flip the bill for the installation of this elevator. With all of the development going around in the city in high-density neighborhoods, the effect of the global pandemic has had on the MTA, we cannot afford the opportunity to install elevators at any station. So I'm glad to support the MTA in its effort to make the system a lot more accessible and a lot more affordable. So thank you.
Okay. That was the formal program, and I think now we're opening ourselves to questions from our friends in the press. If you would just identify yourself.
Kevin Duggan with Brooklyn Paper. I have a question about, so this elevator that a developer built right behind you guys only goes to the mezzanine and not all the way to the platform. With this bonus, will MTA ensure that a developer makes a station actually accessible all the way from surface to platform?
Well, I think the answer is every elevator we can get in this system is, I think as our friend Jose just said, is one less elevator we have to build with the public's money. So the idea is we're trying to accelerate the movement towards full accessibility. Every elevator we get is a plus, but we're going to keep hacking away until we have full accessibility throughout every station.
One more question is, will you use this approach for the York Street station in Dumbo? There's a development going up there right now, 69 Adams, and there's a lot of people who say that should help fund an elevator at York Street.
I know there's a discussion going on between city officials and the city council about the York Street station with some of the adjacent developers. It's probably premature to say, but we want this tool to be available so that it can be applied across the city. That is what our friends at the City Planning Commission and the other city officials are doing, which is that they're what used to be limited to just a small area of the central business district in Manhattan is now, and maybe a couple other high density areas, is now being spread much more widely. That's the benefit here. We're going to see a lot more elevators as a result.
Hi, I'm Marla Diamond with WCBS. I just wanted to get a sense of the scope of this. I mean, how many new developments are there near subways now? And, how much do you think, what kind of a dent will this make in your efforts to get those 472 stations ADA compliant?
Okay, I'll get into a little bit more of the details. There are two parts of Elevate Transit zoning for accessibility. One is the reservation of a transit easement when a landowner is developing adjacent to 94% of the subway and the Staten Island Rail stations in the city. So if you own a piece of property that's more than 5,000 square feet, and if you are in a district other than single-family homes, if you want to build and you're adjacent to a subway station, you have to first speak with the MTA so that they can determine whether they will, at some point in the future, need an easement to be able to install an elevator or stairs. So that is what makes this truly citywide, and it's also long-term planning. Some of these easements will be reserved at locations where it's not in the 20 to 24 capital plan, but we think that it makes sense across the entirety of the system to be looking to these easements. The second portion of the proposal has to do with a bonus for making elevator and circulation upgrades. And this allows the owner of property in the denser areas of the city. To use zoning parlance, it is R9 or R10, our highest density residential neighborhoods. We currently have on the books a zoning mechanism that allows a developer to get a bonus of up to 20% beyond what zoning allows in return for providing accessibility improvements. It is that existing mechanism that we use to get the upgrades at developer expense to the Broad Street JZ station and the Wall Street station. What we are doing now is expanding the geography markedly. It will be present, as I said, in R9 and R10 districts. And another way that we are expanding it is that currently you're only eligible for the bonus if your site immediately abuts a station. We're expanding it so that if your site is within 500 feet of a station, or in central business districts within, I believe it's 1,000 or 1,500 feet of the station, you're eligible for the bonus. Because if you're building a station that's 500 feet away is extremely likely to be serving and helping deal with the additional activity around that site. We are also expanding the geography. So it is not just Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn. It will also apply in Long Island City, Jamaica, and the Southwest Bronx. And so, again, it is an expansion. We're also making some procedural changes that will streamline the process for being able to obtain this bonus. And this will all be laid out in very significant detail at the City Planning Commission's review session at 1 o'clock on Monday, when this proposal will formally enter the public review process.
Other questions? Anybody?
You just sort of answered my question a little bit, but if you could just sort of list some of those benefits, not just in financial, but in practical terms for those developers in the long run to continue to make these investments.
Certainly. If you own a piece of property adjacent to a subway station, knowing that we are such a transit-oriented city, obviously having an upgraded station, having enhanced access is a benefit for the landowner, but also for the general public. With respect to the bonus itself, the landowner is able to build more of a building because it is elective. It's a choice whether you want to apply for the bonus, but as part of receiving the bonus, the landowner is required to work with the MTA to determine the appropriate accessibility upgrades. And the focus obviously is on accessibility and harnessing a partnership with private landowners to have these stations developed at private expense.
Okay. Tim?
Anybody else? All right, thanks everybody.
Great. Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.
Thank you, guys.